Back in my teens, Scream was one of the first horror films I really obsessed over, and I wasn't alone. I mean, it's gotta be the perfect introductory horror film for any teenager, and my, how I envy those of you who got to be teenagers when the original trilogy came out. Instead, the Scream installment that came out closest to my teenage years was Scream the TV series, which premiered on MTV in the summer of 2015. Unlike the films, which at that point in time primarily featured the character Sidney Prescott facing off in a meta whodunit against a killer in that iconic ghost face mask, the TV show would start a brand new continuity, complete with a new final girl, and controversially, without the return of the emblematic mask. At the time, rumors swirled that perhaps the show couldn't use the Ghostface mask, as the rights for the mask didn't lie with the studio, but instead with the mask's manufacturers at Funworld. However, while representatives at Funworld claimed they were in contact with the Weinstein Company for the television series, no deal was ever placed before the production began. All the while, representatives for MTV were insistent that the pivot from the iconic mask was purely a creative decision for a darker and more organic-looking mask. However, they said there was a possibility for a cameo from the classic Ghostface mask, and while it took 4 years, Scream fans finally saw that iconic Ghostface mask take center stage in the rebranded Season 3, Scream Resurrection. Scream the TV series would run for 20 episodes across 3 seasons over the span of 5 years. It goes without saying, The Mask was not the last piece of puzzling production particulars, as the show experienced a swap of showrunners not once, but twice, as well as a harsh reboot for Season 3, resulting in the firing of its primary cast and crew. So before we embark on the ensuing deep dives on the equally interesting plot of the show, I wanted to give the show's unique production history its own deep dive, and this video I've been wanting to make for honestly years and years, so strap in, because the making of Scream the TV series was a complete pressure cooker from start to finish. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Manta Sleep. With the help of Manta Sleep, I've been getting some of the best rest of my life. Manta Sleep's silk eye mask with adjustable eye cups alongside their travel-friendly white noise machine have become a staple to my nighttime routine, and they are extremely effective at blocking out light, noise, and it is the most comfortable sleep mask I've ever tried. If you've got a noisy household, or if you travel a lot, or maybe you just need some better sleep, MantaSleep.com has you covered. With their wide range of products, Manta Sleep is bound to have a product for your specific sleep needs. So go to MantaSleep.com to see their variety of sleep-enhancing products and use my code SKYGUY at checkout, SKYGAE, for 10% off your order. That's MantaSleep.com. Use code SKYGUY, SKYGAE, for 10% off your order. Talks of a television adaptation of the Scream films began as early as 2012, a bit over a year after the box office disappointment of the 4th film failed to spark a second trilogy. On June 3rd, 2012, TV Line reported an exclusive scoop that MTV were developing a weekly series based on the Scream franchise with executive producers Tony DeSanto and Liz Gately, which at the time was in search for a writer. This came soon after the MTV network found success rebooting an older horror franchise with their Teen Wolf series that debuted in 2011. It was 10 months later when MTV finally greenlit production for a pilot episode for the series as a co-production with the TV division of Dimension Films, a company started by the Weinstein brothers after Disney bought their previous production company, Miramax. In July, the pilot found its writers in Jill Bloat-Vogel, who was first announced as the show's sole showrunner, with writers Jay Beatty and Dan Dworkin assisting in writing the pilot and developing the story. Jill Bloat-Vogel worked her way through the 2000s in several writers' rooms, including the 2002 Twilight Zone revival and the Dead Zone series based on the Stephen King novel. By the late 2000s, Bloat-Vogel earned several producer credits across many shows, including on the 2009 slasher whodunit Harper's Island, which aired for 13 episodes on CBS. While the show was cancelled after suffering dramatic drops in ratings, this was perhaps the perfect thing to have on your resume if you're looking to be hired as the person to bring Scream to TV. Jay Beatty and Dan Dworkin had similarly built names for themselves, writing and producing on several shows throughout the 2000s, like Criminal Minds, and perhaps it was their work as writers and co-producers on the hit ABC mystery soap opera Revenge that caught the eyes of the Weinsteins. Fans of slasher TV shows might also get a kick out of this, as after helping develop Scream the TV series, Beatty and Dworkin were then both brought on as writers and consulting producers for American Horror Story's first fully dedicated slasher season, 1984. Jill Bloat-Vogel wasn't the first potential showrunner to be brought on Scream, as the series had already gone through several cycles of being tooled and retooled by the time she was brought on. In fact, the version they were working on when she was brought on was a tricky task of trying to create a supernatural take on the Scream series, but it ended up feeling too far gone from the franchise. And it really came down to make it feel like Scream, that Scream is about a real physical killer and the mask that he wears. It was about getting that meta tone down, the humor, and really tapping into the idea of technology and how kids today make themselves incredibly vulnerable with what they expose about themselves on the internet, and how we all wear masks by what we put out on social media. It was also reported around this time that Wes Craven was in talks to direct the pilot episode, and if greenlit, the series was eyeing a premiere in the year of 2014. However, both of these things did not end up panning out. In fact, as for much of 2014, word on Scream the TV series was nothing but radio silence. Not those guys. In August, though, the cast for the pilot episode was finally assembled. The show's equivalent to the Sidney Prescott archetype would be named Emma Duval, and she would be played by Willa Fitzgerald, who at the time was best known for her role in one of the first Amazon Prime originals called Alpha House, and the USA drama Royal Pains. Since Scream, Fitzgerald has built a name for herself with major roles in shows like Reacher, The Fall of the House of Usher, Pulse, and in film, she starred in the 2023 horror Strange Darling. Another character ripped from the films is Noah, who is clearly a play on the trope of Randy Meeks, and he would be played by John Carna, who before Scream starred in some direct-to-DVD teen comedy films and has since featured in some horror projects including 2025's Shudder original The Dead Thing and 2021's The Blazing World, which was directed by Carna's co-star in Scream, Carlson Young. That's right, Carlson Young, who played a fan-favorite character, Brooke, in the Scream TV series, is now directing. She would also go on to direct the Amazon romantic comedy Upgraded, 2025's Trust, and back with 2 projects at Amazon this year, she will release coming-of-age adaptation The Last Sunrise, and Christmas comedy Clashing Through the Snow. Also announced to be cast at this time was Amadeus Serafini, who would play Emma's love interest, Kieran, and actress Amy Forsyth was initially cast in the role of Audrey. However, the role was recast 10 days later with Bex Taylor-Claus, at the time known for their roles in The Killing and Arrow. After Scream, Taylor-Claus would appear in horror films including Hellfest and Trim Season. The cast would eventually be rounded out with Julie from Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Tracy Middendorf, Bobby Campo, Amelia Rose Blair, and Bella Thorne, among others. The pilot episode was produced in Los Angeles, California in August 2014, but the show still needed a helping hand. Prior to Jill Bloat-Vogel's involvement, one of the writers who gave notes on a potential previous direction the series could have gone was Jamie Paglia, who was brought back around this time to assist in reconceiving the show's mythology, as he put it. From then on, Jamie would end up serving as a showrunner alongside Bloat-Vogel in season 1, and the pair had coincidentally already worked together on a previous show called Eureka. Then, in October 2014, Scream fans got the good news that MTV was moving forward with a 10-episode season set to premiere the following October. This came just 8 days after a similar slasher series was given the green light at Fox, Scream Queens, a decidedly more comedic take on a whodunit with a heavy body count that, because it was on network television, was trying to appeal to a much more broad, but still young audience, casting A-listers anywhere from Ariana Grande to Jamie Lee Curtis, whereas MTV's broadcasting demographic was more strictly teenagers. And of course, Scream was working with a much smaller budget than Queens. Filming for the remainder of Scream the TV series would commence around March or April 2015 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, just about 80 miles north of where Scream Queens was filming its pilot episode during this time in New Orleans. The production codename used during Scream Season 1 was Hush. In April, Scream fans got to doing what they do best, talking shit. Kidding. But after the first trailer for Scream the TV series debuted, fans were not particularly happy. The trailer didn't do itself too many favors, leaving in some production mistakes and giving a blurry and misleading first look at their redesigned mask. According to YouTube commenters back in the day, the show was aiming too young for fans of the films, and without Ghostface or his iconic voice actor Roger L. Jackson, the franchise had essentially jumped the shark and become the very thing they were satirizing from the start. Tough crowd. Listen, I'll give them one thing. The show was definitely hyper-focused on the teenaged audience, and it did not do enough to rope in Scream fans who were perhaps not in high school, which, statistically speaking, was a majority of the fan base. And another critique evident in the trailer that holds a bit of truth is that the show's take on the franchise's metatextual commentary is not nearly as effective as the original films. Of course, ditching the iconic mask took up a great deal of discourse surrounding the show, and even had some cast and crew from the original film series questioning the choice. Roger L. Jackson, who gave Ghostface his spine-chilling voice in the films, told THR, "I can't picture it. How can you have Scream without Ghostface? It's like Friday the 13th without Jason." Famously, a line this guy delivers in the very first scene of Scream is about how the original Friday the 13th killer wasn't Jason.
Mrs. Voorhees was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel. I'm afraid that was a wrong answer.
And given how much of a classic the original Friday is, let alone how many redesigns Jason's mask has had, this argument doesn't hold too much water. Especially because I don't think the mask that they went with was something wildly different from Ghostface. While they gave it a brand new backstory and a definitively grittier look with more subtle features, they both operate off of the same design principles: a stark white glossy mask with black ghostly features accompanied by a long black robe. While this guy is never referred to as Ghostface in the series, they easily could have given him that same nickname. It was around here that even Wes Craven himself didn't have much to say to defend the project. Despite having an executive producer credit on the series, he stated, "I just put my name on it. I'm way too busy to do much else." Craven had no say in whether or not to use the original mask, and cited his 1994 redesign of Freddy Krueger in New Nightmare as why it's sometimes best to stick to what works. I felt that I probably should have stuck to the original face. That's why, throughout the Scream films, quote, "we just let Ghostface be Ghostface." However, later it seemed Wes Craven shared positive feedback towards the new mask, as executive producer Jamie Paglia was quoted saying, although he was skeptical at first, Craven ended up feeling excited about the final design, which he says went through about 100 different redesigns. I mentioned Roger L. Jackson earlier, and another creative choice fans took issue with was the lack of his inclusion, with voice actor Mike Vaughn stepping in to provide a different, albeit similar, threatening voice on the other end of the phone. If you're a longtime Scream fan, you probably shuddered at the mention of the Weinsteins way before me too, and given the many infamous instances of interference on Craven's 4 Scream films, it should come as no surprise that the Weinsteins had their fingerprints on nearly every decision that fans took issue with. The prints are definitely Bob Weinstein's when it comes to the decision to make the Scream TV series its own story, completely separate from the universe and mythology of Sidney Prescott and company. Jill Bloat Vogel initially had the in-universe Stab films referenced in a classroom scene mentioning other classic slashers like Friday the 13th or Halloween, which would have hinted that the new gang was existing in the same world as the old gang, but as she put it, Bob was like, "Not even that. I don't even want a Stab reference." So there were things brought up and we considered things, but essentially it came down to new characters in a new world. The first season included some really interesting directors, including Julius Ramsey, who had a past directing on The Walking Dead, Tim Hunter, who directed an episode of American Horror Story Murder House, Lee Janiak, who had previously just directed the 2014 horror film entitled Honeymoon, before going on to direct Netflix's Fear Street trilogy in 2021. Last but not least is Ty West, who directed episode 9 of season 1. He had already made a number of cult classic horror films at that point in his career, including The House of the Devil, but he would soon go on to direct X and its 2 slasherific sequels. Then, on the hot summer night of June 30th, 2015, the pilot episode aired on MTV directly after Night 2 of Teen Wolf's Season 5 premiere. That's right, they started developing this show when Teen Wolf was in its 2nd season, and it would take 3 whole years to make it to the air. Speaking of Teen Wolf, prior to this premiere, that show's star Tyler Posey starred in a teaser for Scream the TV series, which played on Scream's high school party murder trope. Scream scored just over 1 million live viewers and was unable to maintain consistent live viewership towards the middle of the season. It's fair to say that the ratings were disappointing, but it was not a complete failure by any means. There was a fan base, and live plus 7-day ratings were becoming more and more important by the mid-2010s. So, the show's supporters were still hopeful for a 2nd season. In July, filming on Season 1 was nearing its conclusion when the showrunners and some cast members snuck off to San Diego Comic-Con. There, the show was given a panel presented by Teen Wolf star Tyler Posey.
Because I am welcoming the newest member of our TV family to Comic-Con, the first time at Comic-Con. It's very exciting. And I'm just very happy for these guys. They're all really sweet people. You're going to love them.
They shared their fair share of teases, trivia, and all around, the cast all seemed to have had an amazing time filming this season. Afterwards, a rumor started to spread that Jill Blodt-Vogel had announced a Season 2 renewal at the panel. There's a video of the entire panel, and the panel concludes with no Season 2 confirmation happening by Jill Blodt-Vogel, and during the panel, while both she and Palia discuss their intentions for the story to move past Season 1, they are both clear that the show has not been renewed yet.
Are you looking into continuing it past Season 1? You are? Okay, that's really all we need to know. It's a one and done thing, you get the killer and that's it, but if you're looking forward to more seasons.
Well, honestly, we had to talk about whether it was going to be an anthology series or not, and I think, again, part of the decision for MTV and the mention and everybody was the fact that we have this amazing cast. And if you're going to do something, adopting more of the, blanking right now on American Horror Story, thank you.
Yeah.
You can do it that way. But so far, we're planning on just following this like in a more traditional way.
With as much of our cast
survives.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's not clear how exactly this rumor started. However, this rumor was echoed on the MTV Scream Twitter account and in the publication TV Line. The tweet and TV Line article were then deleted, leaving fans to speculate that Season 2 was perhaps not a done deal after all, and fans were once again holding their breath. But they didn't have to hold it for too long, as Scream would be renewed for Season 2 on July 29th, 2015, for real this time. This occurred one day after the airing of the midpoint episode of Season 5, and 10 days after the cast and crew wrapped filming on Season 1. Following the renewal, the remaining 5 episodes struggled to retain a live audience, reaching a season low of 550,000 viewers in its penultimate episode. However, their shares of the oh-so-important 18 to 49 demographic remained fairly steady. Just 2 days prior to the airing of the Season 1 finale of Scream the TV series, shocking news hit the horror community when Wes Craven passed away at the age of 76 after a private battle with brain cancer. Showrunner Jill Blodt-Vogel shared a statement with The Wrap at the time. "Stunned. It was completely unexpected news. We're just shocked. Wes Craven has influenced me and so many people in the industry, not just people who make horror or genre, but storytellers. He was just so good at what he did, and he was such a gentleman whenever you would deal with him. He, Kevin Williamson, and Bob Weinstein had really shaped these amazing series of movies that people say really rejuvenated the horror genre at a time when it had become very stagnant. And I do think the original Scream is a great example of a movie that is terrifying and hilarious, which I don't know that anyone thought was possible. He was just incredibly open. A lot of people might have thought that doing Scream as a TV series was a mistake, but he was just incredibly enthusiastic about doing it in a new format. His experience was invaluable in creating the pilot for this show and in life. The season 1 finale of Scream showed a nice 36% jump in live viewership, making it the 5th most viewed episode of the season and 6th overall. The episode was dedicated to the memory of the franchise's co-creator and horror architect, Wes Craven. For wickedhorror.com, Nat Bremer praised the finale and its visual cues to the original, stating, "It's almost like in the finale, they finally felt confident that they had earned the right to be called Scream. While it was a season that certainly had its ups and downs, it held my interest through all 10 episodes, and I will be tuning in for season 2. Jill Bloat-Vogel had stated that she, producers, and the network were all hoping for a best-case scenario, so she was envisioning the story they set up in season 1 to be sustained for up to 5 or 6 seasons, and she had envisioned plans and goalposts of what those seasons would be. In order to sustain a larger mystery in this town of Lakewood, by the end of season 1, they had wrapped up an entire mystery and already began to set up another, whether or not the killer had an accomplice. However, despite being the writers who did the impossible and brought Scream to television amidst the Weinsteins' extreme and arguably misguided rules with what to do with the franchise, Jill Bloat-Vogel and Jamie Paglia stepped down as showrunners in November of 2015, with The Hollywood Reporter claiming the departure was because the Weinsteins were unhappy with the creative direction of the series. You know, the very thing they wrapped their hands around the neck of all the while. Jill Bloat-Vogel would remain credited on season 2 as a consulting producer, but not Paglia. From a business standpoint, the reasons behind this swap could have easily just been the show's less than stellar ratings and reviews. Their replacements? Michael Gans and Richard Register, who have worked together for 2 decades. Gans and Register first created the animated spy show SG, aka Spy Groove, which lasted for 1 season on MTV in 2000, then a soap opera, Sex, Love, and Secrets, which ran for only 4 episodes on UPN before being cancelled with 6 episodes never to be filmed. Then supervising producers on the teen sports drama Make It or Break It, which aired for 3 seasons on ABC Family. With the new showrunners' backgrounds in teen dramas and soap operas, the Weinsteins clearly wanted to play up that aspect of the show for season 2. Flash forward to February 2016, and Scream would commence filming on season 2, moving locations slightly from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. In March, MTV introduced some new blood to the Lakewood mix, including singer and actress Kiana Lede as Zoe, Santiago Segura as Stavo, and Anthony Ruvivar, with prior roles on 2 seasons of American Horror Story, plays the new sheriff in town. I really liked the promotion done for Scream Season 2. Each character got a portrait with a piece of the image tearing away to reveal the Brandon James mask. The posters were accompanied by a similar teaser, and both play up the nature of the whodunit that the killer could be anybody, and it's a similar visual strategy as the one that was later utilized in the marketing campaigns for Scream 5 and Scream 6, and it's also in the same vein as the first promotional posters for Scream Queens. The season also had some low-effort teasers that I'll just let speak for themselves. Then, to get viewers back in touch with the so-called Lakewood 6, MTV uploaded a tiny web series that shows the characters delivering their final words to the in-universe podcast called The Morgue in the event that they die in the ensuing murders of Season 2. And to introduce the newbies, there were a series of short interviews between new actors and old about the new characters. A couple trailers later, the season would premiere on May 30th, 2016, on a different day and at a different time than Season 1, shifting from Tuesdays at 10 to Mondays at 11. While all 3 seasons were considered summer programming when most kids in the US are not in school, it is hard to imagine that this later start time wasn't a big factor in the season's diminished ratings, as the Season 2 premiere failed to recoup the audience that had remained throughout Season 1, scoring a record low for the series at just 400,000 live viewers. which is 61% less than who tuned in for the season 1 finale. The season also saw some big losses in that young advertisable demographic of 18 to 49-year-olds, which was also a big red flag. In fact, after a new series low was established after episode 4 of season 2, MTV changed Scream's time slot back to its original time on Tuesdays at 10 for the remainder of season 2. This may have caused a slight bump for the viewership of episode 5, the first season 2 episode to air in the old time slot, but the damage was done, and the rest of the season continued to disappoint in the live ratings. Not once did season 2 manage to go above season 1's all-time low. But in terms of reception from fans and critics, season 2 looked to be in pretty decent shape, improving in both audience and critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes compared to season 1, and we have to remember how much the landscape of television was changing around this time. Teens were already being trained to get their entertainment from streaming services and not from cable. Internationally, Scream the TV series was streamed as a Netflix original series, and both seasons 1 and 2 were put on Netflix in the United States in 2016. As reflected in the Google Trends, interest between seasons 1 and 2 remained pretty consistent on the search engine. In his review of the finale, Trace Thurman wrote for Bloody Disgusting and praised the episode's bold choices and their implications on the characters and the series moving forward. It's not a perfect episode of television, but it is Scream at its best so far. I will get way more into my opinions on these seasons once I do my deep dives, as there are good and even great things about each season, but I have to agree that season 2 was the peak of the show, and it's a shame that the viewership didn't reflect how much I personally was engaging with the material. Season 2 was ordered to have 14 episodes, but they did something really interesting with those 14 episodes, having 12 of them detail a second whodunit targeting the Lakewood Six, and then the final 2 episodes of the season would be devoted to a Halloween special centered on the surviving characters. So once the finale rolled around and another killer was unmasked on August 16th, 2016, the remaining fans only had to wait 2 months for more Scream. This special felt like a soft attempt to reinvent the show as a semi-anthology, as while the previous mysteries are impacted by the special, most of it centers on a brand new killer with its own mythology, with our Lakewood Six serving more as a Scooby-Doo gang than your typical slasher victims. 4 days prior to the airing of the Halloween special, MTV renewed Scream for a 3rd season despite its struggle in the live ratings. But fans were a bit disappointed to learn that the network was only ordering 6 episodes, by far the shortest season. It was also reported by Deadline around this time that MTV was once again looking for new showrunners to replace their replacements. Fans' minds went wild with theories for what this could mean for the series, the Lakewood survivors they'd grown to love, and that one final cliffhanger they left us with in the Halloween special. Would this shorter season be a true send-off to the series and its core mystery? Would this be another attempt at a semi-anthology like the Halloween special? Or would they start over from scratch with a completely new Scream reboot? On March 6, 2017, Emma's mom and Dylan's babysitter, Tracy Middendorf, took to Twitter to tell fans that she would not be returning for the 6-episode Season 3. An integral part of the series, fans of Lakewood's worst fears were starting to be realized, especially after Willa Fitzgerald, who plays the central protagonist, Emma, boarded a Fox pilot in March 2017, making it pretty clear that the original cast had been released from their contracts around March 2017. The sticky-ass Band-Aid would finally be ripped off on April 26, 2017, when MTV announced that Season 3 would be a complete reboot, featuring a new cast, crew, and setting. 7 years later, original star Willa Fitzgerald recalled the moment she was told she wasn't returning for Season 3 in an interview with Collider. "I kind of still don't know what happened. I remember it was the spring of 2017, and we all thought we were doing Season 3. We had all been told we were doing Season 3. Then I get a call from my team, and they were like, so they're actually not using any of the cast. They're recasting the entire thing." I remember being kind of devastated, and at the same time, being like, okay. It was a hard show in a lot of ways, and we were really under a lot of pressure every season. It was kind of a pressure cooker. Brett Matthews, a writer on Supernatural, would serve as showrunner in a co-production between Dimension and Queen Latifah's production company, Flavor Unit Entertainment. That summer, it was reported that the season would air in March 2018 with a special 3-night binge model. And some initial cast members were revealed, including rapper Tyga and son of Biggie Smalls, CJ Wallace, as well as Scream Queen Keke Palmer in one of her first projects after the cancellation of Fox's Scream Queens. But not only that, coincidentally, Keke Palmer also had a song of hers featured in Season 2 of Scream the TV series, so she provides some connective tissue to Season 3, not only from Wallace University, but also from Lakewood. RJ Cyler was cast as the new protagonist named Dion. Before Scream, Cyler was Earl in Me, Earl and the Dying Girl, and after Scream, he would reunite with Keke Palmer in Peacock's The Burbs, where they play siblings. Also, in a very full circle moment for the series, Teen Wolf star Tyler Posey was announced to star in the season as well. On September 18th, 2017, filming commenced in Atlanta, Georgia, for the 6 episodes of Season 3, and it was also on this day that MTV announced that the classic Ghostface mask from the films would be making his return. In a similar delight to film purists, Keke Palmer revealed that Roger L. Jackson, the voice of Ghostface from the film series, would be lending his pipes to the role for the season as well. Promotion for Scream's upcoming event season then got slashed by the largest scandal in Hollywood history, when in October 2017, Harvey Weinstein was dismissed from his companies and expelled from the Academy after more than 80 allegations of rape or sexual assault were made against him. Halfway through production on Season 3 marked the end of the Weinsteins' work on the Scream franchise, and despite definitely co-producing this season, the Weinsteins and Dimension films are not credited on the final product. Filming quietly wrapped on Season 3 around November 11th, 2017, and Scream fans found themselves lost in the also familiar radio silence. No, still not them. The first break in the silence came March 29th, 2018, when Keke Palmer was asked about the show's status in an interview with Forbes. She confirmed the rumors that the involvement of the Weinsteins was what caused a quote-unquote little holdup that had the premiere of the show delayed indefinitely, despite first being announced to air that very month, in March 2018. Palmer assured fans that things were still on track, and she was told by the showrunner that everything looked great and the show would release soon, most likely in spring 2018. Aside from the actions of horrible men in power casting uncertainty on Scream's resurrection, there were also some big shakeups at the network. Starting in 2016, a new president was appointed at MTV, VH1, and Logo. Chris McCarthy, who was credited for implementing a targeted shift towards reality TV, and by 2018, the only scripted program of any of these networks that hadn't been canceled was Scream. On top of that, MTV's parent company Viacom had re-entered talks to merge with CBS Corporation in January of 2018, with the deal eventually going through by the end of 2019. So, to put it lightly, these 6 Scream episodes in hiatus seemed like the last things on anybody's minds over there. Around 6 months later, promotion would start to ramp up again as some new cast members were announced, including multi-hyphenate Mary J. Blige and horror legend Tony Todd, who brought to life Candyman in that classic 90s slasher, which is something the season definitely has some fun with. Then, oops, 8 more months of absolutely nothing. It was during this stretch of time that I lost hope in ever seeing whatever this iteration would end up being, but out of seemingly nowhere, it was revealed that Season 3 would not air on MTV, but on its sister channel, VH1, and it still intended to air its entirety of 6 episodes over 3 consecutive nights, now dated for July 8th, which was just 2 weeks away at the time of the announcement. This left basically no time for promotion. And with a brand new subtitle of Resurrection, that always works out well for other horror franchises, pretty much all of the promotion dropped that same day, June 24th, including a trailer and the season's only poster. 1 week later, a second trailer would drop, then a sneak peek, but that was really all the promotion Scream Resurrection got after a near 2-year delay. On July 8th, 2019, Scream Resurrection premiered its first 2 episodes on VH1. Episode 1 scored a live audience of 790,000 viewers, which was a 96% increase from the final Lakewood episode, and the first episode to match the highs of season 1 ever since. And while episode 2 managed to stay afloat, episodes 3 through 6 plunged to lows reminiscent of season 2. Trace Thurman reviewed the series once again for Bloody Disgusting and had much more negative things to say about the season 3 finale, which he said will be remembered as the television equivalent of a wet fart in the annals of horror. His harsh review ends with stating, "Resurrection delivers an extremely problematic message to its viewers and goes against everything the film franchise stood for. I certainly wasn't a fan of the season, but even I don't think it was deserving of such harsh criticism. There are moments of the season where it works, character dynamics you do get genuinely invested in, but unfortunately it does lose a lot of its steam in its final 3 episodes, which unfortunately accounts for 50% of the season, and damn, the killer reveals do suck." And looking back, it was not strong enough to win over the audience who were already scorned by the firing of the entire cast that they loved, let alone bring enough new viewers to the show to justify any future of the Scream franchise on television. In November 2019, Spyglass Media Group acquired the rights to make a new Scream film, and while the television show was never officially cancelled, it was left in the dust ever since. The 5th Scream film, directed by directing duo Radio Silence, yeah them, premiered in 2022 and has successfully relaunched the franchise to fans both old and new. And that, my friends, is the complete and completely cursed history of Scream the TV series. Each season seemed to be micromanaged to death by Bob Weinstein, and each season had immense pressure to reinvent Scream. And with consistently shuffling talent, it really seemed like everybody's job was on the line. And that is a lot of freaking pressure. Still, because of the love and the passion that it's clear the cast and crew had for the original films, there is a huge sense of joy and appreciation towards the franchise that went into each season, and each season has merit of its own, even if it weren't tied to its references to the franchise. Scream's run as a TV show is pretty underrated, and with what past showrunners have revealed about their plans for their canned future seasons of the show, I really wish things had worked out differently. But more on that in the ensuing deep dives. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.